We specialize in music most people hate. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you check out our Facebook page, Instagram, and our website. Let us share the noise with you.
Yo, this is John from Noise Dosage Media, and this episode is brought to you by Begrudgingly Benny. Interested in putting something horrific and grotesque on your next piece of merch? Benny is tucked away in the fiery depths of COVID quarantine, blasting the filthiest of old school death metal and drawing hideous creatures that he is waiting for you to adopt. Go over to Instagram and follow at BegrudginglyBenny and contact him if you would like some really weird original art for your band or label. Super professional, highly recommended. When I saw the video of you with the pillows, man, the show when everybody went nuts and started beating the shit out of each other with pillows, that was amazing. I've never seen that at a show ever. So where was that?
So the funny thing about that is that was the 70,000 Tons of Metal. You ever heard of that? The metal cruise that is awesome. And the funny thing about it is we've done that twice with the pillow thing. And and it wasn't even our idea to begin with. It was the cruise's idea, because there was like years before we played. I think that was 2015. And for like years earlier, there was like the 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise has like lifers that go every year, and they're like dedicated to it. And they started maybe 5 years earlier doing like pillow fight mosh pits to Raven of all bands. And it just became like a recurring thing. And like the officials of the cruise are like, everybody that runs the 70,000 Tons of Metal are awesome. Like the skipper down, and like they're all like into what they're doing. Like it's not just business. So they know what's up, and they came to us because they know we love doing like
the energy,
weird
man.
Shit. Yeah, and offered to us to do the first official one. But the first year they offered it to do us was 2015, or offered us to do it was 2015, and they dogged us a little bit. And they because they promised to bring pillows to the stage to play, and they didn't do it. And so we were kind of.
My thing is like that probably was a pretty big investment, because how many people were there? Probably like 500 people with pillows.
No. Well, it's a complicated. It's a kind of more of a complicated story than to get into in like in a short span. But they asked us to do it, so we pitched it on our page and stuff in 2015. But so through some like mix up, they didn't. They promised to bring us the pillows to provide to the crowd to do the pit. But when I got on stage 5 minutes before we started playing, a guy that worked for them came up and was like, "Yo, we're real sorry we didn't get the pillows. And they can't bring pillows from their room. You're on your own." And I was like, "This is what you've been telling me to push for weeks," and I was bummed, but. That was the first time, and people improvised, and it was awesome. It was like it went down. It was legendary. And then this year, January of 2020, we played it for our second time, and they like offered to do it again. And this time, they actually did bring the pillows, and that's probably the video you saw where they just threw out. They brought 150 pillows and like tossed them into the crowd as we started the song, and it was perfectly like choreographed and arranged, and it was kind of, since it was such like an infamous thing before, it kind of went down in history. It had like 5 years to like marinate, and it was awesome.
You're like, this is happening. This is happening.
Finally,
this time,
it happened right.
That's awesome. So, with listening to the final mixes of Unparalleled Universe, what was your initial reaction?
I mean, it puts you in it's hard to gauge it, because when you're the one hearing it over and over and over and over again for weeks on end and recording, it's hard to hear it with fresh ears when it's done. Right. So, I mean, obviously, I was stoked on it. It was good to it was just good to be done. But I don't really feel like I was in a perspective. Even still, like, I don't feel like I was in a place to be like, this was amazing. This was like the greatest thing we've ever done, or this is the worst thing we've ever done.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm gonna put it that way, especially live, man.
But yeah, but it's the kind of thing where So when we put out Omnipresent a couple years ago, it got dogged on a little bit because people thought we were like straying too much from like the Origins particular style or something, which we were doing kind of intentionally. And, you know, I love that album. I think that album is fantastic in a lot of ways. And, but, you know, a lot of people dogged on it and it gets to you, but I put it, you know, I put it away for a while and like, haven't sat, you know, I put it away for a couple months and then sat down and listened to it with fresh ears. And that's the feeling that I wish I had the minute it was done. Like just listening to it after a couple months being like, oh God, I totally understand my intention of why I did this. Like I just let criticism be like, bum me out.
Right.
And I feel like I had that same thing with Unparalleled. Cause that's just an artist's, I mean, artist, loose term, but like when you create something like that and you put all that time and effort into like,
and somebody just shits on it.
Not even shit on it, but just you hear it. You shit on it yourself because you hear it 100 times a day, every day. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm fighting the fear of recording guitars at home because of that situation. I'm like, do I really want to sit down and track guitars and criticize myself for months on end, or do I want to go to a studio and just crank it out?
Yeah, you know? It's a double-edged sword, man. I mean, I just you know, I do like guest or like additive vocals for a couple other bands, and I just did some for Psychroptic not that long ago, and
right on.
It was it was that kind of, I went in, I knew what I had to do. I was prepared because I was home, so I had time to prepare for it. Went into the studio, pounded it out easily, you know, like just pounded it out and came back being like, oh yeah, great. Pounded it out. It was, you know, I didn't have to like focus on it for weeks on end and stress that like how much it was going to be like criticized or whatever. So it's just sometimes when you just let go and do it, you get the best results.
Exactly. Hell yeah. Perfect answer. You know, what were you most psyched about when like tracking the vocals? Like, was there a specific part that you heard and you're like, crap, man, I can't wait to get to this section?
Oh, on the last on Unparalleled Universe?
Yep.
Oh, I mean, I love the song Truth Slayer on that album is just like, I think that was like kind of the most fun to write and record. It was just kind of like kind of like Redistribution of Filth on Omnipresent. It was just kind of like an outside of the box for this style, for this band kind of song.
Right.
And whenever like Paul throws those at us, because basically our hierarchy is like Paul, you know, we wait for Paul to create the structure of most of the songs, and then we go from there. And we work with what he gives us. And we heard that, like, at first it was just like, what is this? What are we doing with this? What do you want me to do with this? But then it takes a second and we're like, I totally get what you're doing.
Exactly. And I feel like those types of songs always are like the best on the album, because like you always have the songs that you know are coming next. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like a punch in the face that, you know, you're not expecting.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, what was your first introduction to the underground local metal scene, not national?
Oh, local. Oh,
yeah.
We're going way back. I'm an old man. Yeah. I don't know. Fuck. I mean, not as old as some, so it's you can't really say that. People will be like, well, I saw Slayer and blah, blah, blah. Shit. Well, here, I'm upstate New York. I'm Albany area.
Right.
And our scene was amazing when I was younger. Like we had the luxury of being, you know, 3 miles from New York City, 3 miles from Boston, you know, or not 3 miles, 3 hours from Boston, 3 hours from New York City, 3 hours from Buffalo, 3 hours from Montreal. So we had like this amalgamy of like all of these different kind of music all the time. So like hardcore and death metal here melded like perfectly. Like we would have like you know, old, like, you know, in like 98 it would be like Skinless and Hatebreed, you know, Hatebreed opening up for Skinless at like QE2 in Albany, which is like this tiny club that is the most, you know, bananas club I've ever been to in my life. And so here, it wasn't even like really a problem. If you were interested, you could get into these, into the local scene here. And my older brother, both of my older brothers were involved in it. So when I was, like 10 or 11 years old, I think from one of my older brothers, I stole the first GWAR album.
Stole it from him.
Yeah, I stole the Hell O LP, which is probably worth a lot of money right now. But and that was my introduction. Like I was lucky that I like circumvented all of like the early teen years of like in the 90s of being into like Limp Bizkit or fucking whatever nonsense.
Thank God, yeah.
I avoided that and like got like GWAR was the first
metal
band I got super into. Like the most mainstream I think I ever got was like Nine Inch Nails, which is still amazing. And
that's funny you say that, GWAR, because they always play at the Town Ballroom in Buffalo like every year, and I still haven't seen them.
Really?
It's insane, dude.
I mean, I wouldn't recommend it now. I would recommend you being 15 years old and super into it.
Yeah.
And like the without the internet and like having the suspension of disbelief and enjoying it that way. It's a whole different thing now.
In the face with this random crap.
I could rant about the old days of GWAR for forever.
Oh man. So talking about your brother, you know, what was the best part about being in Skinless with him?
I mean, it's a funny story that I've probably told too many times that when Sherwood left Skinless and they were looking for a new singer, my brother actively was against me being in it. We weren't like the closest. I mean, we're still not really the closest.
Right.
But,
that's like my brother, man.
Yeah. He wasn't really down with it. And it was more Noah, the guitar player, that was like campaigned for it and shit like that. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, I was a baby at the time. I was like 23, 24. And then I just
what was the age difference between you and your brother?
He's maybe like 5 years older than me, I think.
Okay.
5, 6 years.
Yeah. I definitely feel that because I feel anything my brother says, he's like only 3 years older than me. You can feel it. Like he always disagrees with me, man.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm not saying he's a dick or anything. I'm just saying like he might have been right. I mean, we did okay when I was in the band, but it was like, it was not nepotism that I joined, ironically enough, you know? But being in Skinless was like an amazing time, like an amazing opportunity. Like, and the album that I put out with them, like, when people
blew up, man.
Yeah, people are super into it, and I still hear about it today. And I'm always, whenever anybody comes up to me and tells me that it was like an influence on them, I'm like shocked. I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing back then.
You're like, my brother still disagrees with me.
Nah, he's into it. He's fine now. But at the time, he was just like, you don't want your kid brother doing that stuff. But I mean, I was in local bands and stuff. I was in bands in the area that Noah knew me from, and that was his like main thing. So when being in like local bands, were you always a death metal kid, or did you branch out into other areas? I mean, I kind of grew up with black metal more than anything else. Like, okay, that was more my jam at the time. One of the, you know, when I first started like looking outside the box for like new music and genres to get into, and I started, I luckily had older friends that kind of like showed me what was coming out. And this is, you know, early 90s, and everything was like mail order. And I think one of the first albums I got through mail order was Nightside Eclipse with Emperor. Nice. And that, you know, when you're 14 or 15 or whatever, and you don't have, you know, pre-internet, and you're opening this crazy looking, you know, album with like corpse painted and dissonant and this like nothing real world happiness about it whatsoever. It's awesome. It's a feeling that I feel bad that people haven't been able to, you know, anybody growing up now in the last 15 years have never experienced, because everything is just like, you know, there given to them. Yeah, exactly. You don't have, I mean, like a lot of the podcasts I do, you know, I get the conversation of like cassette trading, and you know, I didn't grow up in that era, so I'm like, fuck, man, I wish I was like, I don't know, 10 years older.
Like,
how old are
shit.
you?
Dude, I'm 21.
Oh shit!
Like,
oh, you're exactly the era I'm talking about. Fuck.
Yeah, like, yeah, like I don't do visual visual like a Skype chat because I know people are gonna be like, "Fuck this guy, he's only 21."
Nah.
But like,
I mean, it's all just talk. It's all just bullshit. But
right.
I used to goof. I used to goof that when I'm going to get asked in interviews about like the state of metal or whatever, I'd be like, "What do you think? How's metal evolving and this and that?" And my answer would always be death metal and all this like kind of crazy shit that we do all died the minute I found out that Brujeria were not actually Mexican drug dealers that were kidnapping like white college kids and sacrificing them to Santa Muerte to like avoid the police. Like when I was a kid and I got Matando Gueros at like a fucking used record store like 1995, I believed that shit. It was just scary. It was like a visceral, scary feeling that I can't imagine. You know, with the internet, when you could just look up your favorite, you can see like, Nurgle without corpse paint or whatever, and like watch Abbott be a fucking douchebag on stage or whatever.
I think I don't know. The shock factor is definitely very hard to get over nowadays. So I feel like that's one thing that death metal. That's the thing that has died, but gotten to a point where it's like everything's been done. So
yeah.
I don't know. Hey, man, 21, but I think I have good music taste.
Hey, I mean, everybody's into what they're into. It's all good.
So, what's, your first, well, okay, here's a better one.
Nah, give me it. I don't give a fuck.
So what's like the greatest show or festival that you have seen that your band wasn't a part of? Nationally.
I actually have several of these. I saw.
Yeah, it's hard.
Man, this is basically just asking like, what's your favorite show you've ever seen?
Yeah, and that's a tough question.
I know, it's a tough question because like, how do I not go on and on and on and on?
Well, give me three.
Three. All right, number one, Immortals' first tour in America.
Okay.
When right before they put out At the Heart of Winter, I think it was 1999, and they played upstairs at the Palladium in Massachusetts, in Worcester, Massachusetts, in this tiny, it's like maybe 500 cap room, and it was like the biggest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I don't know what it was. They'd never been to the States before, but At the Heart of Winter is probably one of my top 5 favorite albums, and they just blew. It was them and Satyricon first tour in the States, and they blew Satyricon away.
Damn.
I don't really have much other than that. I saw Man of War in upstate New York in Clifton Park at a place called Northern Lights to 15 people, but they played like it was to 15,000. Like they pulled out all of this. They didn't skimp. Like I am a victim of, I will definitely, if there's 10 people and it's a big venue, I'll get bummed and I'll like not give 100%. But they gave 110%. Absolutely.
Right on.
Because it was a weird circumstance. This was probably like 97, and it was like a snowstorm, and like nobody came out. Like the only people I even saw there were like, it was all these expat Russians that lived in the States or something. Like it was definitely people that weren't in like the local scene. It was like people I'd never seen before. Right. It was insane. But let me see what else. What would be number 3?
Here, I'll let you think about it for a second.
All right, what's yours?
On for the topic of small venues, you bring this up.
Sure.
So the best show that I've been to, you say 15 people. So I was at the Lair in Buffalo. It's a rundown fucking basement, and 30 people with Neckbeard Death Camp.
Okay, I've heard about that, man.
Yeah, they kicked ass, dude, and everybody was hammered, and just the vibe was there, like I've never felt that at a larger venue. You know what I mean? Like the community isn't there, but Well, it's there. Let me restate that. It's there, but there's something missing.
I think the number 3 I would give isn't even a metal show, but it definitely changed how it changed me as a performer in a way. Okay. It was this place in Albany called Valentine's, which is a 2-level, like upstairs and downstairs, both have venues. And I think upstairs was some like a local death fest thing that we do every year. And I think it was like Goat Whore and Incantation or something and Mortician. And but downstairs was like kind of like more of an indie venue, like a smaller indie bar venue. And I remember like being at the upstairs, seeing that show, wandering downstairs just to see what was up. And there was this band playing from Japan called it was called P-Lander Z. And they were kind of like a pop punky, whatever, indie kind of band. But they were doing this whole like skit where it was a 3-person band, like bass, guitar, and drums. And they were doing this skit where they were playing this like simple jam. And then all of a sudden they had this like girl with them that came out with a sign that said bass player, like up. And she held it up. And like somebody in the crowd put his hand up. And the song was still going on. And the girl took the guy who held his hand up, brought him up to the bass player, not breaking the song, took the bass off him, put him on the guy in the crowd. It was a simple song, so he got the beat and just started playing it. And then they did it again with the guitar player, and then they did it again with the drummer until every member of that band was replaced by an audience member. And then these dudes did this like insane skit where one of them put on like 2 of them put on like bowling pin costumes, and the other guy put on like a bowling ball helmet, and he ran outside of the venue and then ran inside of the venue through the crowd, crashed into the 2 other band members that had the bowling pin outfits on and knocked them over, all the while the guys from the crowd were still playing this song. And then they just kind of like took the costumes off, took their instruments back, and then just went back into the set. And it was the most amazing. I was blown away at just like the level of just like the threshold between audience performer was just so liquid, and like it's a subtle, like simple goof, like a simple joke that like.
But like everybody's keyed in now, you know what I mean?
It was the most brilliant thing I've ever seen a band do. Like you can pay for all of the stage props and like fire and Viking ships or whatever the fuck people do, but like
fucking
paying for it is one thing, but if you can like get an audience like in that palm of your hand to understand, like understanding without communicating like that, like everybody knew what the fuck was happening. It was so brilliant, and it was just awesome, this like weird indie Japanese punk band, and it was the most brilliant thing I've ever seen in my life. And that that like made me think like, what can I do to like blur the line between audience and performer as much as possible, you know?
Right. Definitely. You know, are they still around?
I think I've never really looked into them too much more because I don't want to like kill the I have this like high regard for them, so I don't want to learn anything about them that like kills that because of that one day. But I think so. Right.
I'm going to look them up after.
P-Lander Z.
P-Lander Z. Okay. So my last question to you is a big question.
Oh, boy.
How does it feel to have Phil Anselmo be a fan of yours?
Is Phil Anselmo a fan of ours? I don't even know if that's true.
I saw something on Facebook. Something about Phil buying merch from you guys.
Yeah, but he buys it. Phil's cool. Phil buys merch. I mean, all right, a couple stories. Phil's cool. Like, a couple stories about that. The first time I ever met him was at Hellfest in France, which is like the like whack-in, but not as commercial. It's like 100,000 people kind of thing. Skinless played it in 2008 or 9. And the thing that was cool about that fest is like there's no differentiation between, you know, bigger artists and smaller artists in like the backstage. So like I would be backstage and I'd be like, oh, fuck, I met like Geezer Butler and fucking Tony Iommi and when Heaven and Hell was playing and shit like that, which was awesome. But I was a drunk young fanboy at the time, and I remember, you know, I saw I saw Dio from afar and got all excited and was like, Dio,
oh, man.
and stoked. But he saw me.
Fucking Dio.
He saw me actively being a drunk fanboy and like turned and bailed, which I don't blame him. But in that same backstage, I saw Phil Anselmo and like came up to him and fanboyed out a little bit. I was like, Phil Anselmo, very drunk. I was. And I was like, Phil Anselmo, you're a boxer. Punch me in the stomach. Because he was like doing the boxing thing and he like wouldn't do it. And I was like, no, Phil Anselmo, punch me in the stomach. And he did. And he like, it was a hearty punch. And I was stoked on it. I was just like, oh, thank you very much. And walked away. And years later, he booked us on this fest that he was doing, which was the...
He's a fan. There it is.
Yeah. He punched me in the stomach. He became a fan. And Housecore Horror Fest. That's what it was, where he bought our merch and stuff. But my if you, I don't know if you're in a rush, but I mean...
No, I'm not in a rush.
A fun story about Phil Anselmo. At that Housecore Horror Fest, like, we know that like Phil Anselmo loves underground bands. He still loves music, and that's sick. Yes. You'd think somebody doing this for 30 years would be like burned out and not give a shit.
Yeah.
So, and like it's also pretty obvious, pretty well known that one of his favorite bands is this band called Portal from Australia.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love them so much. They're one of my favorite bands.
And they're amazing, and we know them. John knows those dudes and stuff like that. But when we played Housecore Horror, Portal was one of the headlining bands, and one of the greatest memories I've had as like doing this professionally was when Portal was playing Housecore Horror. It was in kind of like a basketball court, kind of a big room, that size, and it was a good amount of people, but it wasn't packed. But I remember they were playing, and I was standing kind of like a little bit behind the sound booth, the sound area that was kind of like walled off. And Phil Anselmo I noticed he was in front of me by the soundboard, which was like center in the audience in front of the stage. And he was instructing the sound dudes to like emphasize the parts that he liked, to be like, oh yeah, turn the guitar up now. Oh yeah. turn the drums up now. Yeah, that's good. And like kids were coming up to him trying to get like autographs and shit while he was doing it. And he's like, he was super polite. He was just like, no. He was super polite. He was like, yeah, I'll get you later, man. But this is not right now. Because he was like so into watching Portal. And I remember I just watched him watching Portal the whole time. And like got re-inspired that like somebody that's been in this game so long is so into this band. Like he still is passionate. And that like at a time when I would think I was kind of like, as a nobody, was kind of like giving up the ghost, you know?
Right.
So seeing him awesome, being like passionate about like, not even like side stage in Iron Maiden, but like watching a band that he loves.
He has tattooed on. He's got a tattoo of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's the greatest thing I could ever think of. It's just not somebody totally not for himself. I mean, not for clout. He books bands he loves. He's, for whatever his faults that people give him shit for, like that was re-inspiring to me as like a professional musician to like, I don't know,
watch somebody be that into it.
Yeah, I mean, because
like when I saw Imperial Triumphant, they kind of have the same type of vibe, like a soundscapey vibe. But I haven't seen Portal, and I really freaking want to, because
honestly, I think that was the only time they've been in the States. Now that I think about it,